Okay, so we are going to, or just me, honestly, this time. I'm going to show you how we have been eating. One of the biggest things we have been doing since we started our carnivore diet in January, which has helped me personally to lose over 35 pounds in 4 months. My youngest daughter has lost over 50 pounds in 4 months. My son won't tell me. My husband also didn't really pay much attention, but so far he's lost like 30 or 40 pounds, possibly more, because he didn't start weighing himself until we had been eating this way for almost a month. So it's kind of hard to tell what his starting weight was. So anyway, so as a family, we've lost well over 150 pounds. Maybe getting probably close to over 200 pounds as a family in 4 months on the carnivore diet. And one of the main ways that we have done this is by eating a whole lot of beef, and specifically ground beef. And today I'm going to show you, they had for probably Memorial Day weekend, they had brisket on sale all over the place. Costco, Sam's, even our local Kroger had it on sale. But I was going to be in an area where there was a Sam's, so I actually just got mine at Sam's along with a chuck roll, which is easy to get at Sam's. You can actually order it for pickup, which Costco doesn't have that option. And every time I walk into a Costco, I end up spending too much money. So pro tip, if you want to save some money, keep yourself out of Costco and do order pickup at Sam's for only what you need. And that way you're not going in there and being tempted by, new kitchen towels or heaven only knows what else that they have at Costco. So anyway, so that's what I did. I got the chuck roll and a whole brisket. The brisket was on sale for $3.98, and that was for Prime. I believe the chuck roast was $5.99, or the chuck roll was $5.99 a pound. And I ended up, I'll give you the breakdown at the end of everything and how it ended up. But anyway, so this is what we're going to do today. We are breaking down a chuck roll, breaking down a brisket, and then we're going to grind it all up. And in a couple of days, or maybe a week or so, I'll show you some of the things that we've used it for, some of our meals that we've used our all the meat for, maybe a couple of recipes if I can make a few things that we use for it. We're actually getting ready to start the beef butter bacon eggs challenge. That's something that Ken Berry came up with, Dr. Ken Berry. I'm still having a lot of inflammation. Since we came back from our trip to Disney, my legs and hips have been aching more than they usually do, and I'm not sure what's up with that. So it could possibly have been a reaction to some of the treats that we had while we were at Disney. So I might need to detox that. In order to do that, I'm going to do the beef butter bacon eggs and give up my favorite chicken wings for a little while. We'll probably do 30 days, maybe 60, could possibly 90, depending on how well I feel and if it does it does indeed help me with my pain levels and inflammation. So anyway, I'll be back at the end and I'll let you know the cost breakdown and how much this ended up actually costing. All right, so let's get into it. This is a big old chuck roll that I got at Sam's. I think it was like $5.99 a pound, but you can look and see for sure. And then I'm really doing my best. I've watched like Butcher Wizard videos, and I'll put a link in the description box to his channel. He is like really awesome, but his chuck rolls do not look like my chuck rolls. I have like tried to find the last bit of a ribeye, the rib roast that he shows in his videos, but this is it's only my second time getting a chuck roll, both times from Sam's, and I have not been able to ever find the like remnants of a ribeye steak. So I'm just going to do my best here, and I believe I did kind of process it enough, or in the processing, I believe I found a couple of chuck roasts. And I usually can like figure out where the chuck roasts are, but I'm not going to be trimming away much, if any, of the fat, because when you are a high fat carnivore, fat is where it's at. So I let it stay where it is. And I'm pretty sure I found the a couple chuck roasts, and I will cut those away. But this in itself, why I'm doing this, and this whole process, while this video will be like really long, in reality, this day took me about, I think it was like 3 hours total from the time that I started this and processing the chuck roll. But I'm not just doing the chuck roll. I'm going to be doing a whole brisket too, but that's in a little bit. But I've peeled back, and I'm trying to just peel off the like top part that's like really fatty. Don't even know what it's called. And you really don't have to know. I mean, I'm really going to be grinding this, so finding the steaks inside and the chuck roast, not really my top priority. I really just want to get it cut down into more manageable pieces so that I can cut it up to grind it. But I did find a couple of chuck roasts, and I was trying to find whatever the remnants of the ribeye, if I could find one. So right here, I'm kind of like trimming off where a lot of the, it's like this, it's like bone dust, and I like try to cut it off, and I will actually keep that, and we'll process it for the dogs, because our dogs are also carnivores and they eat raw. So I will use that for their dog food pretty much. But I was cutting off a couple chuck roasts that I will keep intact and won't grind, because we do eat them occasionally. Chuck roasts are not our favorite. I don't know. They're just not as appetizing to me anyway, the shredded meat as opposed to ground meat. But I did want to try out a taco recipe with some crunchy shells and some soft shells that I'm going to make with our new crepe pan before we go on the beef, butter, bacon, eggs for the month of June. And we had decided to do that because of our trip to Disney, and we knew that we weren't probably going to remain strictly carnivore because it's our vacation, and we wanted to try a few things, and we did. However, I thought it was going to be detrimental, but it really didn't seem to bother me as much as I thought it was. Usually before this, if I would have even thought about eating something with dairy, or even thought about eating a piece of bread or something, I would be so tired and sick for days that it just wasn't even worth it to even think about it. But we did have a few treats while we were at Disney, and especially at Epcot, and I was fine. And in fact, when I came home, I had actually lost 5.7 pounds. But granted, I was also fasting most of the day. We decided to do that after reading a book on fasting, which I'll put a link in there. They had a portion of it that talked about when you're on vacation. And one of the scenarios, the lady said she was in Italy and decided to, be able to have the treats because, you're Italy, it's food. And in reality, it's actually the same thing at Disney, because part of the whole thing is the, special treats and foods that you can get only at Disney World, and especially Epcot. So we decided to go that route. And actually, our son did not. He stayed strictly carnivore the whole entire time. And, that was fine because that's what he wanted to do. But we really didn't eat too much. We shared everything between 4 people. So if we got a cookie, we split it between 4 people. So it wasn't like we were eating the whole thing. And so we really did not, in reality, eat a whole lot while we were there. Plus, we were walking like 12 miles a day. Really, it was like between 9 and 11. So a lot of walking. So anyway, I did try to cut off a little piece of a steak that I thought I was finding, and then I was actually looking for the what do they call it? Like it's some sort of Texas steak or something, cowboy, or I don't know. Anyway, another steak, another cut that you can find, and I thought I found it, so I put that to the side and put off a piece of the what I thought could possibly be the remnants of a ribeye. Set that off to the side to cook up in the air fryer for our dinner today, for my Scott and I anyway. The kids were eating something else. So, and my husband leaves for work at like 2:30. So generally we eat dinner really early. At least he does. Sometimes I eat with him. Sometimes I wait till later. But when we're doing that, I usually only eat, or he only eats, that's his last meal for the day. So he's fasting from like 2 o'clock until like we eat breakfast the next day, which is usually around 8:39. So I usually try to do that too. Sometimes I can't if I'm too busy cooking while he's eating his dinner and I haven't got really enough ready for me to have to. So, but today I'm going to make us these steaks. And any of the like silver skin stuff, like right there, I peel that off, and I don't give it to the dogs or anything because I usually grind their food, and that silver skin will like clog up the grinder. So I'll just toss it. You could probably keep it and use it in your to make bone broth or something for extra collagen, but I have a lot of bone broth in the freezer right now, so I don't really need to. Plus, I really don't have a lot of bones right now to make beef broth, and very little room in our freezers for extras. So I usually don't really take the time to save it. I'll just toss it or, give it to the dogs because, they can chew anything. But so now I'm just going to cut all of the chuck into like cubes, really big cubes. That helps it to go in the grinder. And that'll be about all I keep doing. And this, like I said, it took me about 3 or 4 hours from start to finish to process all of the meat today. And I also am going to be grinding it. So it is not a quick and easy thing to do, but it does save some money, which I'll do the little cost breakdown at the end. I'll let you know how much all of this costs and how much I ended up with. But when you're feeding 5 people carnivore, you try to make the most of your money to get the most bang for your buck. And these chuck rolls are awesome for getting a lot of meat. And no, it's not grass-fed. And I hope to be able to find an affordable way for us to get grass-fed, to make me buy a whole cow or whatever. But I haven't found a farm yet that I've been able to go visit. And to me, that's kind of important. If you're going to be paying that much money, you need to know who you're buying from. And we haven't had that opportunity yet. So, okay. So I think I found the ribeye. So that's what I'm cutting up here. And I'm going to trim it up, and we're going to cut it up and put it in the air fryer. But I believe I also found the Denver steak, which is what I'm cutting up right here. And I'm also going to make that in the air fryer. So I have the Denver steak and what I think was like a part of the ribeye, but we don't know. And I'm not really positive. I probably am wrong. It's probably just a chuck steak, but we'll put it up and make it in the air fryer anyway. But I'm going to use a little bit of the Redmond Real Salt, their organic seasoning salt. And since I grew up with Lowry's seasoning salt, it's always been like my secret ingredient to anything that I've made, because it was like my mom's secret ingredient. She didn't cook a whole lot, but she loved Lowry's seasoning salt. And to me, it's just like, the comforting flavors, but it has a lot of not so great ingredients in there, like MSG. So I prefer now to use the Redmond's Real Salt seasoning blend, and it is actually really good. So it is not like it's stepping down at all. It's pretty much tastes very similar to the Lowry's seasoning salt, in my opinion. So I'm just cutting up the chuck into, I don't usually I say like 1 inch pieces, but these are huge, probably more like 2 or 3 inches of cubes for our grinder. And I put them in the Ziploc baggies, primarily because I can get some of the air out, but they won't be in the freezer for very long because I'm going to actually grind this meat today. But I stick it in the freezer because it helps them to, it helps it to go through the grinder. That's something the Butcher Wizard suggested. He said to put it in there for about 30 minutes. But generally, I put it in the freezer for probably more like an hour, 2 hours. It doesn't seem to get very frozen after only 30 minutes. So I usually keep it in there for quite a while. And honestly, because I start doing other things and I'll forget about it, and I hopefully come back before it's so frozen I can't put it in the grinder. But today that didn't happen. So anyway, just going to continue cutting up. And this is actually, the video's cut. So a lot of my cutting has been cut out. So you don't have to sit here and watch me cut up 5,000 pounds of meat. I think this chuck roll was like 12, 15 pounds or something, maybe more. Maybe it was like 20. I don't know. But it was a lot of meat. So a lot of cutting and a lot of processing. And just like going to Disney, cutting up this meat before I started Carnivore, it would have been so much pain. I would have been in so much pain because anytime for the last 2 years, or maybe longer, I don't know, everything has been a blur for the last like 2 or 3 years. But before, if I tried to cut up anything, even if it was just like, a carrot or something, just one, it would kill my back. Anything of using my arms. As a soap maker, I couldn't make soap. I'd have to, take 3 or 4 days in order to make a batch of soap, because every process I would have to use my arms and it would become very, very painful. So me doing this and spending like 3 to 4 hours at a cutting board and using my arms at, waist level, which is what killed my back most of the time, is truly remarkable, because there's just no way I would have been able to do this even a couple months ago. We started Carnivore in January. I think I'm not really sure when the back pain kind of went away. I mean, it will still hurt me after quite a long time, but it takes a while. And I have lost, since January, and this is May, I've lost 32 and almost 33 pounds. And while I was at Disney World, I actually broke a stall. I had lost like 2 pounds in the month of April and hadn't lost anything really of note since March. But when we got back from our trip, I had lost almost 6 pounds in 10 days. So that was phenomenal. And I honestly thought that I was going to probably gain weight because we had some little treats while we were there. And I'm not sure, it was probably because we walked like 10, 12 miles a day. And I'm not used to that. But whatever it was, I lost 6 pounds. And then this week, after being home, I lost an additional 2. And I thought probably I would gain some back because while we were gone at Disney, I fasted most of the time. and we would eat our keto, or not keto, but a carnivore dinner every night, and it was usually pretty late, which is not optimal, but it is what it is when you're on vacation. And I would generally have something in our Instapot, which I take with me everywhere when we're traveling. And along with 5 corgis, I also take my Instapot. And I use that to make some taco meat while we were gone, and had that ready. I made it in the morning, set it, and it was ready by the time we came home. And then another night, I put some chicken breast in there, which is not, ideal because there's not a whole lot of fat. But I added some butter, and I made some like a Italian seasoning that I used to put in there, and set it and came back, and we just had the shredded chicken for that dinner. And I added some cream cheese and some bone broth, and added some butter to try to boost the fat content since it was chicken breast. But anyway, so that's what we did. And then one night we actually got wings from the unsauced wings from Buffalo Wild Wings. At least I ordered unsauced. What we actually got were wings with sauce, which wasn't too cool because we didn't really want to eat all of that sugar. And like I said, my only son, was wanting to stay like strict carnivore while we were gone. So he had to eat wings with sauce on it, but they did have a buffalo sauce, which wasn't bad. It was just hot sauce and butter. So I'm glad I had gotten those because that's what he ate. So he tried his best to stay strictly carnivore. And even though we had coffee every day, we were having just plain lattes, nothing with any sugar or anything. But I did drink more lattes than I normally do. I usually drink coffee in the morning, our bulletproof coffee. And instead I was getting a latte at some point in the morning at whatever park we were at that day. So I did end up drinking a lot more milk than I usually would. And I think I'm pretty much almost finished with this chuck roll, processing it at least into the cubes for now. And I'm trying to get off just more of that silver skin that likes to clog up the grinder. And once I'm finished with that, we'll hopefully get all this cubed up, stick it in the freezer, and then we'll be back and to start the grinding process. But before I can get on with the grinding, I have to pay the meat tax to the corgis. So Baxter gets a little bit, and Winston already had his, but he gets an extra piece because he's Winston. He's Winnie the Pooh. And then I've got to somehow manage to get Molly. She's not really aggressive, so it's hard. All the boys try to get the food away from Molly, so I have to fight them to get a piece to Molly, but she gets hers too. And there you go, Molly. Molly got hers. Okay, so now it's time to work on the brisket, which I also picked up at Sam's. It was on sale for, the prime brisket was on sale for $3.99 a pound, and that was actually cheaper than the chuck roll. But brisket is a little bit leaner than chuck. Well, actually, this one was extremely fatty, and since we are high-fat carnivore and the fat is where it's at, I leave the fat mostly on the brisket as well, because I like our ground beef that I grind myself to be on the fattier side. So usually if I'm buying it at the grocery store, the highest fat we can get is 80-20, but I like mine to be more like 70-30. And honestly, I have no clue what the ratios would be if I were to figure this out, because I don't know how to measure the fat versus the protein and all that good stuff. So I just do whatever. And this is simple, and that's my whole reason for doing carnivore, is not only to lose weight and to get rid of a lot of horrible health issues that I've had, but also because it's simple and I would like to keep it that way. So you won't see me counting my macros or getting out a calculator to try to figure out exactly how much fat I am eating in a day. I will the do it this way until it no longer works. And then I will try to figure out, where I might need to make some adjustments to break a stall or to lose more weight, or if I start gaining weight or I start losing too much weight. I'll figure it out when it happens. But right now, I'm not going to stress about it. It's not a huge deal to me. So I just process this meat and I will grind it with the fat, and it will taste really, really good. And I don't even need to know how much fat is in it. But anyway, so ours usually probably turns out to be more like 70-30, maybe like 60-40. I don't know. There was a lot of fat on this brisket. So there's no telling how much could be, but like I'm going to put this in the freezer too. And since I'm processing such a large amount of meat, this brisket, it's probably not going to take me as long as the chuck roll because it's slightly smaller. I think the chuck roll was like 20 pounds. This brisket was like 12 or 13. So it won't be like equal portions when I grind it, but I'll try to do my best. And like this had a huge amount of fat on it. So what I trimmed off, I just like trimmed off the like outer layer to try to, is like had some bone dust and stuff on it. So like right here, this kind of looked kind of gnarly, the fat that was on there. So I trimmed that off, and that was about it. I did find a couple little areas that looked a little questionable, even on a prime piece of meat. So, and I'll probably just toss it, or I might save it and render it down to make into tallow if I were to have enough time. But like I said, I don't really try to worry too much about it. So if I have to toss it, it's not a huge waste because we usually don't use a lot of tallow. I usually, if I'm going to use any kind of oil or grease to cook in, we have so much bacon grease laying around that I never need to use anything else. I would never be able to use up as much bacon grease as we go through. So we could like, eat it by the spoonful and we wouldn't use it all up. So I either cook it in butter or bacon grease, and 99% of the time it's going to be bacon grease. So just like with the chuck roast, I cube it up. This one I tried to make into a little bit smaller pieces because there was such a huge amount of fat. I didn't know how that was going to go through the grinder. So once I got to this portion, this was like massive amounts of fat that were on this piece. And probably people would think it's sacrilege to take this gigantic brisket when we own a smoker and not smoke it. But honestly, the amount of time that it takes to smoke a brisket is just way too much trouble. And my husband and my son really enjoy brisket, but my daughters and I do not. It must be like a man thing. At least it is at our house. I do not really care for brisket very much. And one of the things that we did while we were traveling is we went by on our way home. I don't think on our way there, I don't think we found one, or we went a different way. But on our way home, we actually had less resources by the time we were on our way home from Disney World. So we didn't have a lot of we only went grocery shopping one time. And that was so we could take our son when he wanted to go see a Super Target, because he hadn't been in a Super Target since we left Florida originally, which was like 2009 or 7. I think it was 2007 that we had left Florida and we moved to Tennessee, but we hadn't been in a Super Target for a really long time. So we went and did that. And that was the only time we actually went in a grocery store. So we didn't have a lot of food left by the time we were driving home. So we had boiled eggs and, all the stuff I showed on our previous video for our snacks, pork rinds, and, beef sticks and all that stuff. But after 10 days or 5 days at the parks, our beef sticks were pretty depleted. All of the jerky was gone. I didn't have time to make boiled eggs. So on our way home, we actually we stopped at 2 different Buc-ee's. The first one we stopped at on our way out of Orlando. I don't think we got anything there. Maybe we did. Maybe that was the one we got food at, but I'm not positive. We ended up getting brisket. If you ask them, you can buy it by the pound. So that's what I did. I got some brisket by the pound, and then also you can get their smoked sausage. So I got some smoked sausage, just plain by itself by the pound, and also some boiled eggs and stuff while we were there. But then this is how our Denver steak and what I assumed was a piece of ribeye turned out, and in the air fryer. It looked really good. It was edible, but I don't think I found the ribeye because this piece of chuck was quite a mouthful to chew. Scott actually said he thought he probably lost weight that day because he had to use so much energy chewing this steak for his dinner that he had to have lost weight because it was so much effort. But the piece of the Denver steak, I would say in comparison, I'm not sure if this is a Denver steak or not, but I'm pretty sure it was. However, it was okay, but it was also pretty darn hard to chew as well. And that may have been the air fryer, but it was edible and it was actually quite tasty. So even if it was hard to chew. But now we get into the long, tedious process of grinding up so much meat. And I did cut this part quite a bit. I cut a lot of the cutting portion as well. But we're running this through the grinder. I mixed, after I had the meat in the freezer for probably a couple hours. It still wasn't incredibly frozen. It was just really, really cold. But even that helped it to run through the grinder pretty well. And I mixed up the pieces of chuck with the brisket. I would have a bag of each, and I would just take some from the chuck and then take some out of a bag of the brisket and blend it all together. And you can see it's actually really quite fatty, the grind that I'm getting here, but I won't actually use all of this, or I actually will take this and run it back through the grinder, at least a few pounds of it anyway. So I'm running it back through the grinder and doing a second grind on about 9 pounds is what I did. I took another smaller bowl, we're re-grinding it and making it into 3-pound portions. That is how much we typically eat in a meal for the 5 of us. I'll cook up about 3 pounds of ground beef, and we'll usually have something else as a side dish. Lately, it has been chicken wings. I adore chicken wings in any form, and mostly everybody else does too. They really enjoy them on the smoker. Whenever I have the time to do it, I try to do it on the smoker. But I was grinding up just 3-pound portions of this, regrinding it. Most of it I will actually leave just as the first grind, but this one I was regrinding so that I could wrap these up and portion it out in 3 pounds, like I said, which is typically what we eat for a meal. So So I'm going to put these into 3-pound packages for the freezer. The rest of it here that it didn't fit in the 3 pounds, I had a little extra. I'm going to mix back in with the meat that I only ground the once, and I'm going to portion that into burgers that we'll probably have some for our dinner tonight. And I probably could have had a lot easier time of pressing these burgers if I had stuck the ground meat in the freezer for a little while before I tried to press it. But by the time we got to this point, after grinding and cutting and messing with this meat all day, I was getting a little tired, so I just wanted it to be over. So I was just trying to get it done, and the little pieces of parchment paper actually helped to keep it from sticking to the actual press, but getting it out wasn't as easy as it should be. And when I'm rolling these into balls, I usually like make, ball that's going to fit like a good size in my hand. I don't go to the trouble of measuring them. And I usually just eyeball everything because I'm actually usually pretty good about getting things the same just by eyeballing after, being a mom and cooking for the last 20 something years. So yeah, so I made the rest into burgers, and we're going to flash freeze those burgers because that will, not only will the parchment paper help to keep them from sticking together, but freezing them will also help. It also keeps them from shrinking too much. If you go back and cook them later, it prevents shrinkage. But some of them I was decided to make for our dinner that night. So again, I used my handy dandy favorite Redmond's seasoning salt, and also some white pepper. I seem to react a little bit to black pepper, so I've taken to starting to use white pepper on most of the food that I cook. And then I know it's not carnivore, but we also like a little bit of garlic powder, granulated garlic. And when we go beef, butter, bacon, eggs, I'm only going to be using salt, so I won't season all of these burgers right now, just the ones that we're going to eat tonight. I'm going to throw them in the air fryer and just going to wrap up the rest of them, package them up for another day. Don't know if I'll stick them in the freezer. I might just keep them in the refrigerator and we can have them for our dinner the next day. They're actually excellent out of our Pit Boss smoker, so I'll probably end up doing that. But I packaged them up, and we eat a lot of burgers, so we will definitely use these probably pretty quickly. So yeah, I think I'm gonna just stick them in the smoker the next day, which is what I did. Put most of them in the smoker. Didn't put cheese on them because I don't really do that well with cheese, so these stayed uncheesed. And I didn't season them except with some salt and pepper. We still haven't started to eat better bacon eggs, but I just wanted to get the taste of the brisket chuck mix to see how this batch turned out, and they were absolutely phenomenal. You can really taste it if you only use like salt, and you really get the taste of the meat, and after it's been on the smoker you get that flavor as well. So it was really cool. They actually turned out really, really well, and if people wanted to add cheese they could, but we wanted to try them as is. Okay, so I'm back, and I'm going to go over exactly how much everything cost. Now, time-wise, I am not absolutely positive how long it took me. So I'm going to guess probably about 3 hours total from start to finish, with some of it actually happening the second day, like after I flash froze the burgers. I mean, that was the next day that I bagged those up. So but anyway, so our cost breakdown for everything that I got at Sam's, the whole chuck roll was 22.47 pounds, and it cost $129.88. The whole prime brisket was 13.5 pounds. The total cost of that was $53.65. So out of that, I got 9 pounds of ground beef, 2 pounds of scrap for the dogs, 4 pounds of burgers, 5.12 pounds to grind up for later, and another 3.7 pounds to grind, 5.8 pounds to grind. All of those are pieces that I didn't actually grind up already. They are the ones that I put into cubed up. So I put them into big cubes, stuck those in the freezer, and I was like pretty much exhausted by the time I was done grinding up what I did do. So I did not have time to do all of it. So I just put all of what I didn't want to do, I just left it in the freezer in the Ziploc bags. And when I want to grind that, I'll just get it out a couple of days before I'm going to grind it up. Maybe not even 2 days, probably like a day and a half for it to thaw. I'm not sure. It depends on how cool or hot or whatever it is. And I thaw it usually in the refrigerator. And I want to leave it at least a little bit partially frozen because that makes it easier to grind. But anyway, so I got 5.12 pounds, 3.7, 5.8. So those are all bags that I have bagged up to grind later. And then I have 3 pounds of chuck roast that is actually in the freezer as well. So that is 32.62 pounds used out of the total 35.97 pounds. The total cost was $5.63 for everything. That is combined with the chuck roll, which was $5.99 a pound, and the prime brisket, which was $3.98 a pound. So the total cost $5.63 for meat that now has 0 added water. No added flavors, no added color or whatever the crazy things that they do at the grocery store to make it last longer, or at least appear to last longer. And because we grind it ourselves, it didn't heat up in a massive grinder that can increase its histamines. So there you go. And I looked it up, and so we ended up with some better for you, at least marginally, ground beef. It did take a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It is a lot of work, but I believe it's worth it, especially for the taste. Now, in my opinion, there's really nothing better than a brisket burger. I actually really do not like brisket. It's not one of my favorites. It's actually one of my least favorites. However, when you mix it up with a chuck, it is phenomenal as a burger, and it makes a phenomenal burger out of our smoker. So I looked and tried to find a brisket burger, and so I could compare what the cost would be, what kind of a savings, if any, that we achieved by all of this work. So it was the least I could find for a brisket burger was $7.77, and I'm pretty sure that was from Amazon Fresh. I'm not sure because it wasn't our local grocery store. But anyway, so that was a pretty good savings in comparison, and we actually know everything that's in there, no added color, just made it, so it's all nice and fresh. So anyway, so there you go. That is the cost breakdown for everything that we just did. So since I talked about our trip to Disney, I thought I'd share a few pictures with you of our trip and just tell you how much we appreciate you watching. If you really enjoyed this video, if you'd like to see more, please subscribe and like this video. It really helps us to be seen in the algorithm and all that good stuff. But y'all have a good day.